known for the next comedian, Greg Schwartz, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, Gotham. So, my last name is Schwartz, which means that I am 100% Jewish. Well, it's actually more like 96%. You know, the rabbi takes a small tip at birth. Yeah, you laugh, but I've got an innie where there's supposed to be an outie. Recently took a DNA test, found out that I am a German Jew, which helps to explain my suicidal thoughts. Prior to doing comedy, I used to be a teacher. And when most people hear that, the first question they usually ask me is, what do you teach? Morons. Do you teach?
I used to.
Oh, okay, so you can relate. What'd you teach?
I taught high school English.
Oh, okay. Social studies. So you can relate that it is unbelievable the things that will come out of a student's mouth. I once had a student tell me that the Great Depression is what his mother suffered after his sister was born. Another kid asked what year the War of 1812 took place. But probably my favorite was the student who, after learning that seedless grapes were genetically modified to not have seeds, asked, is that like chicken and boneless chicken? He was our valedictorian. One year, I decided to let my students vote on having a class pet. Some students wanted a goldfish, some wanted a hamster, but the majority voted for the kid that asked when the War of 1812 took place. I taught for 25 years, which was long enough to start having second-generation students, which is always pretty bizarre. First day of school one year, a girl raised her hand and said, Mr. Schwartz, you had my mother as a student. I said, I know. She's still sitting right next to you. So they made us attend a lot of sexual harassment seminars at work because of the Me Too movement, and they defined sexual harassment as any unwanted sexual advance. Look at me. That's every advance I've ever made. I worked in an inner city school and had a really big drug problem. There just weren't enough to go around. Actually, one day, I did bust a student selling pop brownies, and I got sent to the principal's office. According to my boss, when a student is selling pop brownies, the appropriate response is not, I'll take two. It's three. But I'll tell you what the hardest part is about being a teacher, and that's actually dealing with parents. A few years ago, some officials at the local Mormon church heard that I told my students that some Mormons once practiced polygamy, and they waged a campaign to get me fired. I just told them, look, if you're that unhappy with what I said, why don't you come down to the school and let's just discuss it during a parent-teacher conference. I made the decision to not get vaccinated. Now, it's not that I don't believe in the science of the COVID vaccine, but I moved to Florida. And after a few months there, death doesn't look too bad. Now, I joke a lot about being in Florida, but it's actually inspired me to do a lot of writing. The first thing I wrote after I moved there, a suicide note. I mean, there's a lot to do in Florida. There's, you've got the beach, you've got Disney, and the number one thing to do in Florida, according to TripAdvisor, leave. I didn't want to move to Florida, but I went there for family reasons. My wife said we were going. And I retired to make the move to Florida, and I was nervous about not being able to contribute financially to the house. And my wife just looked at me and said, honey, it's okay. I'll pay you for sex. Yup. So far, I owe her $436. We did make the drive up here from Florida to do the show tonight, and we like to play games in the car. Our favorite is the license plate game. Do you guys know that one? Yeah, my wife points out a license plate, and I try to guess which of my former students made it. Some of you aren't laughing, but if you worked at my district, you wouldn't. No, you know, living in Florida, you learn a lot of interesting things. One of the most interesting things I learned after moving to Florida was that Florida actually has a poop museum. That's not a joke. There is a museum in Florida that houses the world's second largest collection of fossilized poop. Yep. The largest collection is Congress. Another interesting fact I learned after moving to Florida was that turtles can live to be over 100 years old, which makes them the second oldest living creatures in Florida after my parents. I mean, my parents are not aging gracefully. You know, my mom, she doesn't understand technology. She called me up complaining about problems with her iPhone. I told her to go to the Apple store. 20 minutes later, she called me from the farmer's market. My dad, he's getting stubborn in his old age. He's at that point now where he falls asleep. And when we wake him up, Dad, you're asleep. No, I'm not. I'm resting my eyes. Dad, you're snoring and drifting into oncoming traffic. My parents are at that stage in life where they're complaining all the time that they're cold and they're stiff. Yeah, it's rigor mortis. I recently went to visit my parents. I went to visit my parents and couldn't understand why they started wearing matching jewelry. And then I realized, it's Life Alert bracelets. So, as a displaced New Yorker, let me leave you with the best thing about living in Florida. All right, that's my time. Thanks. I'm Greg Schwartz.